guys, welcome back to our casuals club tournament, which we hosted just before Store Championships to do some deck testing. On the left hand side we have got them playing Lanny Lords of the Crossing, very kind of standard deck now, but at the time was kind of really starting to take off. On the right hand side we have got Greyjoy Banner to the Stag being played by Daisy, which was a bit of a pet deck of his at the time. So our setups are 3 cards to 4. Obviously we've got the mountain on the left hand side, which is the big impactful character. On the right we can see that Daisy's mostly got out Chuds, but he has got that raiding longship, which is very nice as a Greyjoy player to see early on. Now, as I've said before, I won't be focusing on play mistakes and game state mistakes, because we all make them. There's no real point in me going into detail about them and analysing them. What I'm going to try and focus on is what the players are doing and why they're doing it and what I would like to see them do. Trying to think about some of the strategy behind what they're doing. So, on the left hand side with the Lanny Crossing deck, ideally obviously you want to see Tyrion on the setup, and personally I'd even prefer to see someone like Tyrion or someone like Jaime to the mountain. So it obviously depends what Ben has got in his hand. However, the mountain is a problem, and especially against Greyjoy it means that Balon can't get that undefended because of his ability, which is nice to see. I think one of the things that the Greyjoy deck does have going for it, however, is its cost curve is spread out. While you are playing, yes, 3 of Balon, 3 of Asher, probably 2 of Theon, so you have got multiples at that cost slot. You're probably not necessarily running a lot of multiples of your 6 or your 7 coster, like you might be saying the Lanny Crossing, which is I think actually why Lanny Crossing is almost a difficult matchup against itself. So we've got Noble Cause versus Calling the Banners. Ben's used both his reducers to put the Tickler out, and let's see what else he can get on the board. I'd like to see a power, an intrigue icon. Daisy has obviously kneeled his Lordsport Shipwright because Ben didn't think to kneel and discard it straight away. So because Ben had taken an action as first player, Daisy was then able to respond by using the Lordsport Shipwright to kneel the King's Road. So strategically, like as I was saying before, that's not necessarily a play, it is a play mistake, but strategically it's quite interesting because what it highlights is key mechanics of the game about how you should and shouldn't use your cards, which is what I will be focusing on. So let's see what the Greyjoy can marshal this turn. So Daisy's doing the same thing that Ben did, using his reducer to get another reducer out and then using that to pay out. Early game I like this, however he is treacherying the cost reduction. It's a 1-for-1 gold trade, and I suppose if you've got that treachery in hand it's hard to not want to do that. However, personally I prefer to, especially against Greyjoy, save that treachery for the raiding longship or for the Great Kraken to stop them getting that key power or stop them getting that unopposed challenge through the raiding longship. Against Greyjoy I think there are a lot of really good kind of targets for that treachery. I don't quite see the point in using it on the cost reducer, especially when Daisy has now been able to get Euron out anyway. All Ben effectively managed to do there is probably prevent him getting out, saving a gold for maybe a We Do Not Sow or something else. So, playing the pillaging game with grey area is always a nice little gamble, and it adds a bit of spice to the game. You're never quite sure what's going to happen. For me, this is why the Lanny Crossing deck doesn't appeal personally, because there is too much gambling involved, and there is too much. While it is a very strong deck and very consistent in and of itself because of the number of characters it has, you do end up in a situation where a lot of it comes down to variance about what can you pillage or what can you tickle off your opponent's deck. So Ben bounced the Hound in there to do a power challenge just to get it unopposed. Daisy kind of says, I don't care. That means the hand is going to bounce back to your hand. I'm not going to have to deal with him on the board, and actually you've now got a power for me to steal, which for me, letting that one challenge go unopposed in that first round just so that they've got a power is always quite nice if you're going second, because you can just steal it back from them. Oh, getting a fishing net. This is a card that when it was first released for 2nd edition, I was very lukewarm on it, especially with it being so close to Raiding Longship in the packs, and Raiding Longship being a very efficient card in and of itself. However, over time it's a card I've come to appreciate a lot more, especially with some of the anti-stealth tech out in the meta at the minute. I was playing as Greyjoy against the Night's Watch deck, and fishing net was key, just because using fishing net alongside those Raiding Longships meant that I didn't need my stealth to get my unopposed challenges to rush. I have to preface this with, I'm not normally a Greyjoy player. I'm not a big fan of Greyjoy in general. I do prefer slightly more control and tempo build rather than a rush or an aggro build. I always find when I'm playing aggro, I feel like I'm playing a game on a knife's edge, and the second you fall off it, your opponent can just bring it back, and you end up being in trouble. So we're just going into the second round and we're looking for plot choices. We're on 3 power to 1 for the Lanny to the Greyjoy. I would say board state wise, we've both got good 7 costers out. I like Euron. I think he's really useful, especially if you can get off, say, We Do Not Sail, or if we can convince your opponent to use a King's Road, so you can keep stealing him, and he effectively becomes a very, very efficient economy card by recycling those King's Road. I think for me, when you first look at him, he is a slightly more conditional version, but he comes close to being economy like Tywin, just because if you were just relying on your opponent using a King's Road, he becomes dangerous, because a high level player will just not use it, let it sit there, let it contribute to their initiative. And however, if you've got, because Greyjoy have got these anti-location tech like Newly Made Lord and like We Do Not Sow, you can get rid of those locations into their discard pile yourself and then be able to play them out yourself. And what we've seen now is Daisy has played out a bodyguard, and this is obviously what he wanted to save that gold for using that cost reducer last turn. So all Ben did by using that treachery in the previous round was prevent him from playing out a bodyguard, which is simply played out this round instead. Plot choices. I really like the choice of Filthy Accusations in Greyjoy. I think and I've talked about this before, what I really like about Filthy and Greyjoy is it allows you some control in a deck which often struggles to control elements which don't enable simply rush. Daisy's got a 2nd fishing net. So the way I play, what I'm imagining his deck is he's probably got 2 Raiding Longships and he's probably got 2 fishing nets. If he's got more than that, I would be surprised. However, he just seems quite lucky that he's got it so early on. Putting it on a cost reducer. Strategically, normally I really like this. It means that they can't jump block challenges, and it means that if they want to block a challenge, they have to put in an impactful character, which is what you really want to see. You want them to kneel out their board. However, in this situation, Ben does have another cost reducer. All he's going to do is probably kill the cost reducer with the fishing net on it this turn. Daisy will then be able to play it out on the other cost reducer. So you end up with a cycle here of just making those characters, which are effectively just money every turn anyway, into forcing them out of a challenge. So I'm not sure how I feel about it in this situation. Having controlled Gregor already, I suppose one of the reducers is the best target to get it out of your hand. And just to make the kind of challenge math and the challenges that little bit easier for you. You will notice that Daisy didn't use the Lord's Port ship right this turn to kneel out the King's Road. I suppose he's sitting there kind of going, go on, please, use the King's Road, discard it, let me get it back with Euron, give me that economy. It's daring him to use it to get something out, which Ben hasn't fallen for. So we've just got a little power challenge. Putting that fishing net did mean that he could just use a chump to get through a power challenge and win it on 1 strength, which is very nice. Daisy thinking about who he wants to do that intrigue challenge with. And actually then just probably going for a military challenge with Euron. Let's see how they go through the challenge with. I think Ben is probably thinking about whether, well, the way he's playing with his cards. For me, if I was a Greyjoy player, the way he's playing with those cards, I would be thinking he's either thinking of ambushing the Hound in to prevent the challenge, or he could have another treachery in hand. Obviously we know it's the Hound already, so he's going to go unopposed. Doing the military challenge, getting the unopposed, getting that fishing net back in hand so that he can use it again next turn. And I think this is one of the most of, while the fishing net is on the table, it does, and is very open. It doesn't have the same threat of activation that the raiding longship has, and I think that for me is one of the strengths of Greyjoy, is when you put a challenge against them kind of going, well, I only really want to defend with one character, otherwise I'm kneeling out too much of my board. And if they just defend with the one character, you go raiding longship. So they know you're going to remove their character from the challenge, so they either have to defend with two or let you get that unopposed, which is exactly what happened there. Did the intrigue challenge with the Lordsport ship, right? Ben defended with Tickler, and he just removed him from the challenge with raiding longship and got the unopposed anyway. And that's what I really like about the raiding longship. It's that threat of activation. It's the same reason why I am liking, design-wise, what they're doing with Stark in 2.0, while I haven't exactly played a whole lot of Stag myself. It is that threat of activation. You've always got that threat of activation about whether you're going to cancel events or whether you're going to use your ice. You're not playing cards that are hidden in your hand. You're not playing a put to a sword necessarily. Obviously you would anyway, but the start card is ice. It's on the table. You can always see what it's doing and what it's going to do to you. It's just whether they choose to use it. Daisy saving his Lordsport shipwright from the military challenge with the Hound by using Arisen from the Sea. So this is obviously the final round. Desi was very surprised to be in this situation. I know he has struggled at times with some of our other tournaments to get towards those top tables, and he has good days and bad days with his decks. Today, I must say, he did play very well, and his deck really performed for him on the night. And he sat across from Ben, who historically Ben doesn't necessarily play Thrones a huge amount. However, he plays a really diverse set of games. He plays a lot of board games, he plays Conquest, and he plays a lot of other card games. So he has a real jack of all trades, but because rather than saying jack of all trades, master of none, he has got a really deep understanding of general game mechanics, which I think really enable him to be a very effective player despite not getting the chance to play a whole lot. I just have to take a little bit of time. I was running this tournament, and it is a casual tournament, so I didn't say anything about it on the day. But if you're going to play with your cards, please put them in sleeves. I just personally find it so painful seeing someone playing a game without sleeves, leaving their cards out there unprotected. It's just so hard to watch. However, the upside for me as a commentator, there's no glare, so that's quite nice as well. Pro tip, if you're going to be on camera, please use matte sleeves. They're amazing. They make my job so much easier. So, chosen plots for the next round. Oh, and I can't quite see what Ben has got. We have got Karma Voracerus on Daisy's side, and we have got a different plot on Ben's side. I'm very sorry. We'll have to see how the round plays out and see if we can figure out what they're playing. As the Lannister player, I would hope it was Summons, and I would hope that he is looking for someone impactful like Tyrion or Tywin. While I was trying to look at the plot, I missed to see whether he was actually searching for a character, but hopefully we'll be able to see this round what he marshals. As I say, I think as a Lannister player, if you don't get those economy cards out earlier, like Tywin and Tyrion, the game can become hard and it can drag out, especially against a Greyjoy deck that has got that unopposed going for it. Ben on the left hand side choosing not to marshal anything, and my assumption would be that he's just going to jump the hand in later, and the Greyjoy player on the right getting Balon out. He's now got two of his big characters. He's got however, he still doesn't have any stealth out, but he does have the Lariagan Longship and Balon's ability, which do kind of enable those same kind of unopposed tactics. For me, one of the key signs of a skilled Greyjoy player is not playing your deck, it's playing the cards your deck gives you. So while Greyjoy traditionally with all their stealth might be a rushy kind of unopposed deck, being able to play saying, okay, I haven't got the stealth, I'm going to play the cards I've got and I'll get the unopposed how I can, but I'll also try and control the board, build up to a point where I've got enough stealth to make that end game rush. Well, when you've got enough stealth on the board, being able to play that Rise of the Kraken and getting all of that unopposed power is really, really effective. And it's just a case of building to that point. And it's so long as an opponent, if Greyjoy can get to that point and you can control them and break that turn, you're in a really good situation. Then doing a challenge with the mountain and hitting another location. It seems to me that Daisy keeps hitting characters with his pillage with Euron, which he doesn't want to see. He wants to see locations, and Ben keeps hitting locations with his pillage, which is not what he wants to see. So, unfortunate to them. Oh, playing Do Not Bet Against My Family. So let's try and see what he's got. Daisy kind of going, what does that card do? As I was saying, this is a casual tournament, and actually in our local meta we don't have a huge number of players playing Lannister. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of Do Not Bet Against My Family. I think that in a card it's a gamble. Yes, you can run a lot of uniques at the minute, however I think you need more uniques than we've currently got, personally, to feel kind of statistically able to play that card. I know you can stack your deck with certain cards, like if you get the Rose Banner, but for me, I don't feel it's as impactful as it could be. So he got Pycelle from that challenge, obviously going to throw him into that challenge, try and get the card draw from it, which then replaces the card, which you're effectively paying a card for, which gets you a character, which gets you a card back, so it's card replacement, which is alright, and it gets you that challenge in the process, which efficiency wise is quite good. Getting rid of Bob's Warhammer. I remember talking to Daisy about this deck, and the Warhammer is literally just there for the stealth, for the extra strength on Balon. Yes, it can be used for that kind of pseudo-intimidate effect at some point in the game when you're trying to close out if you want to kneel out some of the characters, but the primary purpose of that card is just to give Balon that bit of extra strength in those challenges to make him that bit more potent. Doing a power challenge against Daisy. Daisy's going, well, I'm going to leave that unopposed because I want to swing back with my characters and get my effects there. That, however, does mean that Ben gets his unopposed, his power, and his Lords of the Crossing power. So, playing against that, I would always be slightly tempted to defend it, to prevent, because not only are you preventing that unopposed, you're also preventing that Lords of the Crossing power, which really slows the Lannister player down, especially when you're in a situation like Ben is, where you don't have a huge number of power icons that are going to stick around on the board, and he's been able to take the Hound out of his hand, so that strips Ben of yet another power icon on the board. However, while I say he's been stripped of power icons, he still is on 7 power, he's still in the lead when it comes to power, but Daisy is now going to be throwing his characters back at him, so we'll see where we are at the end of this round. Again, hitting a character, hitting Jamie. So as pillagers go, they're quite good pillagers. He keeps hitting kind of cards you don't want your opponent to see, but he's kind of going, I'd quite like to see a location sooner or later. But I realised that a lot of these Lannister decks do play quite low on locations and focus on those events. However, he got his renowned, his unopposed, and his claim. So he's claimed that 3 power back very quickly, especially with the power on Euron. Getting unopposed with Balon, and renowned on Balon for that military challenge. Ben obviously leaving the tickler standing so that he can win dominance, but also so that he can probably tickle his deck and just see what he can hit. Hitting a large support shipwright, which is quite nice. And discarding another one from play. Just reading the tickler because he's so unsure about how often it hits. Again, I apologise for that, but as I say, we do play in a meta which doesn't play a huge amount of Lannister. We see a lot of Greyjoy and a lot of Tyr, but we don't actually see a huge amount of Lannister. I suppose now that the meta is currently filled with Lannister crossing, maybe a few more people will play it, but I think the way that I know my meta is they're much more likely to play cards that are going to be anti-Lannister than actually play Lannister themselves. They're quite house loyal to the cards that they like. Oh, so we've got trading on the Pintoshi for the Lannister player, just trying to get out some big characters to really try and see if he can control that Balon and that Euron out on the board. And Daisy's thinking, well, I'm just going to rush to the finish. I've got 11 power, and as Greyjoy 11 power with Balon out, I think you can rush to the finish at this point. So unless Ben plays extremely defensively to get himself through this round, I think he's going to be in trouble. Playing out that fishing net, getting that fishing net on the mountain, just to really kind of hammer it home to say that I might swing for a military challenge with Balon, and the mountain's not going to be defend against it. You've got no one with high enough strength. But let's see. Oh, Tywin hits the board. Daisy's thinking, God damn it, that's the sort of character you don't want to see. That's someone who can defend against Balon. Let's see if Ben brings out anything else. That is because he's used his 3 cost reducers. That did only use 4 of his gold, so he still does have 6 gold to see if he can play something else out. He might have another hound in his hand, so he might hold on to it, or he might even have a Hear Me Roar, which he could use to surprise in a character that might be able to defend. Obviously getting that Great Kraken out gives Balon that stealth, which does mean that while normally I quite like the idea of stealthing small characters, forcing them to use someone bigger to defend, because you've got Balon, you can stealth those big characters and you know those smaller characters aren't an issue anyway. So Daisy is automatically going to get this 2 power here from the unopposed. There's nothing he can really do about it unless Ben can ambush in something like the Hound. So the Hound is now able to defend that challenge. So having that second Hound in his hand has really helped him. However, Daisy does have the raiding longship, which has meant that he gets his unopposed power anyway, and obviously the renowned on Balon. Ben getting rid of a dupe on the mountain and getting rid of the tickler for claim. And this is one situation where I do really like using the military challenge first on that closing turn, because it forces their board down and means that you've got a greater chance of them having less characters standing. Ben's thinking about whether he wants to defend with Tywin to try and prevent that unopposed challenge with Euron, but also realising that Daisy is just going to get that challenge off with the little Chud. So he's won that challenge with Tywin to get his power, but Daisy now does a power challenge with the Chud, gets his unopposed and his 2 claim. And that's the game over, as you say. So it is just, again, hitting that kind of, getting to high enough power, hitting a critical mass of good characters on the board with just enough little tools and being able to push the finish line. I really like the way that Daisy controlled the board in this game. However, I do think that the Lannister player struggled with draw in this game and maybe didn't necessarily see those impactful events that he would have wanted to be able to kind of push back. Anyway guys, see you again soon. Please comment in below. Remember, this is a casual game. So keep it friendly. Bye.